The Chicago Teachers Union stands strong for adequate safety measures ahead of in-person school reopenings. Amazon workers in Alabama will begin their historic vote on a union next week. And 6 poultry workers die in Georgia after a liquid nitrogen leak. Chicago teachers, represented by the Chicago Teachers Union and Chicago Public Schools, are back at the bargaining table after a 48-hour-long cooling-off period in which schools remained shut. In-person classes for kindergarten through 8th grade were set to begin on Monday, but the school administration canceled late Sunday night after it became clear that most teachers were not on board to begin in person. The union and the schools had yet to reach agreements on the teachers' demands for a health metric that shuts down schools during outbreaks and remote accommodations for teachers who live with people with medical conditions. For weeks, Mayor Lori Lightfoot threatened to lock teachers out of their remote teaching platforms if they refused to teach in person this week. If mass lockouts took place, the union said it would call a meeting of its House of Delegates, which would officially set a date for a strike to begin. Both the mayor and the school administration have continued to insist that the schools are safe, but the city's own data shows a spike in infections among students and staff since in-person classes began on January 11th. I spoke with 2 Chicago public school teachers and union members on their experiences during this struggle.
Unfortunately, what you see on the news is not what's happening across the city. Teachers are sending in photos, finding mice and rodents, finding piles of dust, noting that the cleaning that was supposed to take place once the pandemic started never happened.
I decided to practice my right to work in a safe working environment, and I continued working from home. As a result, CPS locked me out of my Google Classroom and any CPS-related accounts, and I have been unable to teach my students since January 12th. My students have gone without a teacher now for 3 weeks, for over 3 weeks. And although the mayor and CPS keep preaching equity, that is not equity. And the plan that they currently have in place is not equitable for our Black and brown families that have been the hardest hit by this pandemic.
I personally have experienced the horror of COVID-19 with my 5-year-old child who was admitted into the hospital and spent a week in the ICU with a condition called multi-system inflammatory syndrome due to COVID. This is a post-COVID syndrome that causes children and young adults to have inflammation in the body that attacks major organs. Some children have had limbs amputated, others on breathing machines. As a teacher and a parent, I would hate for anyone to go through what I went through with my child.
We are the union. We know that it is necessary to fight. We always have to fight for what our students deserve, what our teachers deserve, what our communities deserve. So we must continue standing strong, continue working remotely, and continue fighting until we get a safe reopening plan.
Around 6,000 employees at an Amazon fulfillment center in Bessemer, Alabama, are set to begin mail-in voting next week to determine whether they will form a union with the retail, wholesale, and department store union. Ballots must be received by the National Labor Relations Board's regional office by March 29th. The board will then start counting the ballots at 10 a.m. Central Time the following day. Amazon, well known for its extensive union-busting campaigns, attempted to force the workers to vote in person, but the NLRB ruled to allow mail-in voting as a COVID safety precaution. Though the Bessemer warehouse had just opened in March 2020, the conditions quickly pushed the workers to unionize. Workers say that they have faced, quote-unquote, outrageous work quotas that have left many with illnesses and lifetime injuries. They first met with RWDSU representatives in the summer, and by December, more than 2,000 workers had signed union cards, reaching the 30% threshold required by the NLRB to hold a union vote. The workers have gotten tons of solidarity, from fellow RWDSU members to the National Football Players Association, which released a video featuring several prominent NFL players that went viral back in January. This struggle in Alabama is also reflective of the critical unity between the labor movement and the movement for racial justice, as the majority of these warehouse workers and leading union organizers are Black. The success of this campaign would be a victory against all odds and serve as an example to the 1 million plus Amazon workers across the U.S. 6 poultry workers died in Georgia last week after a liquid nitrogen leak at the Foundation Foods plant in Gainesville, Georgia. Over 130 workers were evacuated to a local church, where up to 100 workers left without receiving medical attention out of fear that their immigration status would be used against them. Gainesville, known as the poultry capital of the world, is no stranger to horrific workplace accidents and workers' rights abuses. The meatpacking industry as a whole is notorious for its rampant health and safety standard violations, union busting, and inhumane treatment of its workforce, largely made up of Latino migrants. In particular, the Foundation Food plant has received numerous safety violations over the years. The meat processing and packing industry has been a hotbed of coronavirus infections and deaths, as employers have been slow to provide adequate PPE, and conditions in the plants make it nearly impossible for workers to social distance. This tragedy at the Foundation Food plant in Hall County, Georgia, follows news that the county has the highest per capita rate of COVID-19 in North Georgia, with its Latino community being disproportionately affected.